A GMO labeling bill first filed by State Representative Ellen Story from Amherst 8 years ago is finally out of committee and will soon potentially go to the floor for a vote. Well, joining me is Stephanie Kraft, a Valley Advocate reporter who's been writing about this issue, and you're here to talk about what's in the bill. And let's start off with, why is it taking so long to make its way through? What does the bill entail?
The bill would require that food for human consumption that's produced by genetic engineering be labeled, that seeds produced by genetic engineering be labeled. And retail food and wholesale food as well has to be labeled. Say it's going to a store, it has to be labeled so that's clear to the people who run the business. Food in both those situations must be labeled, and seed must be labeled. One feature of the bill that I think is going to be somewhat disappointing to people who are concerned about GMO food is that food that you buy at farmers markets or directly from a farmer does not have to be labeled. And there are some other exceptions. I think as popular as farmers markets are in this area, that's a significant one. So the bill is not a bill that's going to be completely satisfactory to people with concerns, but it is a very important bill, and there is much opposition. That's why I think it took so long.
Okay. Now, some people aren't even as familiar with the difference between GMO foods and non-GMO foods. So how important is this to the average consumer?
Well, as you say, people differ in the degree to which they are informed. But the difference, well, the fact is, I think basically genetic engineering is still so new. Although we've been hearing about it for a long time, we still haven't had generations of people eating food that's produced through genetic engineering. And I think a common misconception, although not universal, is that genetic engineering is just a more advanced form of the kind of selective breeding that we're traditionally familiar with. The kind that gives you a redder rose. You just keep crossing roses until someday you come out with the Lady Mary Crawley red, red, red rose and you win the flower show. Or that gives us faster racehorses, or plumper, juicier oranges, something like that. The thing everybody needs to know about genetically manipulated organisms in food is that some of these, not all of them, but some of them are radically different than anything that was ever done with traditional breeding. When you put a gene for scorpion venom in cabbage, because the scorpion venom element will make caterpillars die when they eat the cabbage. When you put a fish gene in the tomato, because a tomato you want it to be more resistant to cold. When you put a jellyfish gene in a potato to make it turn green when it needs to be watered, this is not like anything we ever did with traditional plant breeding. And it's very important that people understand that. And the fact that there are unknown results from those things is what makes people concerned about genetically manipulated elements in food.
And that's where you would say the biggest difference is between genetic engineering and selective breeding.
Oh, correct? Make no mistake, it's a radical difference.
Now, I had mentioned this on social media, and I got a lot of reaction from people that said they would rather choose a non-GMO food over GMO. They just tend to be a little bit more expensive. But I did have somebody reach out and say, well, the government shouldn't get involved in labeling, especially in regards to this legislation bill that's working its way through the House. So
how about the government? Well, you have to remember that the government is already involved in labeling. That's why you have labels on the food you buy in the grocery store. Would you really want a grocery store in which, say, a food has some element to which you or your child are allergic? Would you not want to be able to find that out by looking at the label? The government is involved. You just have to remember that that's the government. That's not a voluntary effort on the part of food companies.
Now, it's very interesting to see this bill had bipartisanship between Republicans and Democrats, which often they're at odds with each other, but not with this bill. As opposed to a lot of the farmers are at odds saying, no, 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 we don't want the state to take care of this. Needs to be done on a national level. Yes. Why is that?
Well, the Farm Bureau, the National Farm Bureau, has thrown in with the grocery manufacturers of America on this issue. The grocery manufacturers of America are the ones that are pushing a national law that would preempt state laws. However, in Massachusetts, not all farmers who belong to the Farm Bureau take the same position as the Farm Bureau. And this is one thing that the Northeast Organic Farming Association has told me. They had to let the legislature know that the Farm Bureau does not speak for all farmers, not even for all farmers who are members of the Farm Bureau. And of course, particularly many organic farmers are not in favor of the release of genetically engineered food without its being labeled.
Now, there's a trigger clause in this bill that some supporters aren't fond of.
People who are politically minded are just going to love the way this plays out. It's like a game of chess. Our bill, like the bill already passed in Connecticut and the bill already passed in Maine, with a slight difference, requires that at least 4 other states pass similar bills before this bill can be implemented. It's extraordinary to have a bill that stipulates that something has to happen outside the state for the bill to be implemented within the state. That's very, very unusual. The Maine bill, I believe, actually requires that 5 other states pass, and the states have to be contiguous to the state. Say Massachusetts, well, good, so Connecticut is contiguous with us. But Maine is only contiguous with 1 other state, New Hampshire, so unless New Hampshire passes a bill, their bill can't be implemented. The trigger further states that at least 20 million people must be covered by the states, the contiguous states that pass the bill. So all of New England has about 15 million. Massachusetts has the most. Massachusetts has between 6 and 7 million. So I don't see how this bill gets implemented unless we get New York in. Because New York has, I think, about 19 million people, so that's almost instant. If we could get New York alone, no, because that's not 4 states. That many states and 20 million, very, very gamey thing is going on here.
So definitely something to look forward to see as this moves. Even if it were to pass tomorrow, we still have to get other states on board with it.
Anyone who's under the impression that when this passes we have labeling in Massachusetts, no, that's not going to be the way it works.
Well, we shall wait and see what happens. Stephanie Kraft from Valley Advocate, thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.